Hi, Lexville fans, and hi, Terry. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We have a great event happening next week. This is our final concert, and you are one of our guests. Can you tell us about you, Terry?
Hey everyone, so happy to be here today on Zoom, but really looking forward to meeting you all next week in Lexington. My name is Terry Sweeney. I'm a member of Sandbox Percussion, the percussion quartet that is joining the Lexington Philharmonic next week to perform Viet Cuong's beautiful percussion quartet concerto called Renewal.
Wonderful. So can you tell us about that ensemble Sandbox, how it started, who you are?
Totally. Yeah. So the four of us in Sandbox, we met kind of in various moments in grad school. We were all studying at the Yale School of Music, not exactly at the same time, but the program is really small and really focused on percussion chamber music. And so we all knew of each other, and Sandbox is sort of the logical stepping stone after that program in grad school. We started the group because we really wanted to play music together and try to figure out a way to make that our job, which has been mostly a joy for the last 11 years.
That's amazing. 11 years together.
Yes.
They're like some anniversary and
Right.
because you deserve medals.
Right.
Yeah, it's a very long relationship and beautiful relationship. And I like that it's somewhat the topic of the piece that we will perform together, Renewal by Viet Cuong. Do you want to tell us about that piece?
Sandbox's relationship with Viet, the composer, goes back to actually when we were in undergrad together. I lived in the same dorm floor as Viet at the Peabody Conservatory. And little did I know he would eventually, write music for this group that I would be in that didn't exist. But so we've known Viet for many years. And the five of us were actually talking about a piece together, some kind of concerto around 2015. And back then, Sandbox was very young and definitely had no opportunities to make a piece like that happen yet. But a few years later, Viet was given the chance to write a piece for the Albany Symphony's The Dogs of Desire. And he had the idea that he would make that piece a percussion quartet concerto. So this actually does come from Viet. The piece was commissioned by GE, General Electric, for this particular festival with the Albany Symphony. Viet, he, being the very creative and ingenious composer that he kind of came up with this incredible way of sort of synergizing that commission by General Electric and making the piece really focused on renewable energy.
Absolutely. Renewable energy and also teamwork, like working together.
Exactly. Yeah. So one of my favorite parts of this piece is it kind of breaks the mold of a really traditional concerto. I think the expectation for a concerto is that a soloist will play virtuosic solo passages. And the virtuosity of this piece is that we split all the music kind of by four. So if I were to play just my part alone, it really wouldn't sound like very much. But he sort of like densely weaves the music together to make the music eventually sound very virtuosic, but none of it can happen unless the other three players are also playing, which is a really funny way to work on a piece. For us, it's sort of odd, to practice, because when I'm practicing, my part really doesn't resemble what you actually hear on stage at all. So the best example of this is the opening movement. We play with these wine glasses, and they're all tuned to various pitches. And if you imagine, I'm holding two wine glasses, and so one is one note and the other is another note. And so if I'm alone, all I can do is play the two of them together. But when I'm with other people, we can sort of cheers our wine glasses together to make new chords and combinations. And so really that's the best example of this sort of this synergy and this working together, which really is the metaphor for Viet behind the piece.
Yeah, this is unbelievable. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have never heard the piece, you cannot imagine what you will hear. It's absolutely fascinating, amazing, unique experience. I cannot think of another piece that would create such an experience, a similar experience for the audience.
I totally agree. It's it's in three movements, and in those three movements, Viet takes us to very disparate places in a really beautiful way.
Yes, so you mentioned wine glasses, but for our audience members who are not musicians, we do not put wine in the glasses to create the sounds. And you're going to come in the country of bourbon, so can we do that with bourbon inside?
That's a really good question. We haven't tried it, but now that we know that we have to, we will certainly be trying it next week. On stage, we usually just use water because it's a little less messy, and we've had some mishaps, not many, but some. So better to stay safe and use water, but we'll see next week. We'll give the bourbon a try.
Okay, well, you're going to have even more fans if you do that. Those three movements are very different in character, in virtuosity, and also in the instruments that you use. Different sounds, and the orchestrations around are also very different. How would you characterize all of these movements for audience members who are not really used to go to concerts?
Definitely, yeah. So, well, like I said, the piece is all about renewable energy. And so Viet divides that up into these sort of three categories. The first being hydropower. And so that's the wine glass movement, which is beautiful sound, but a very delicate sound. We can't actually play very loud with those wine glasses. So that's sort of a really serene and beautiful melodic movement. The second movement is all about wind power. So in that movement, we're actually playing what looks like a kind of hybrid drum set. So we're sharing one snare drum in the center, but we all have a kick drum and we all have a hi-hat. And so it looks like I don't know, like an 8-armed drummer playing this really densely hocketed, really fast, upbeat music. Super exciting to play, but really tricky rhythmically. And the third movement, it's all about solar power. And so in that movement, Viet takes a lot of these metallic percussion instruments. So an instrument like the vibraphone, the glockenspiel, crotales, a lot of these sort of resonant ringing instruments, and he sort of places them together in a way that they lay flat and really look like a solar panel, which is crazy from a distance. They really do. And in that movement, what we do is we all share single notes of a really long melody. So I have to hear a whole melody, but I'm only ever playing individual notes of that melody as it passes between the four members of the ensemble.
What would you say is the general reaction in the audience after listening to that piece?
Well, one of the reasons, we love playing this piece because it represents a really sort of particular challenge for us. But honestly, more than that is people love this piece. It always is a massive success. Viet found this way to channel this really particular thing, this renewable energy idea, but somehow he writes a piece that feels incredibly uplifting and optimistic. I think there's an element of sort of playful virtuosity. There's a few surprises at play that Viet will he sort of saves a few tricks up his sleeves that he does with the four of us that everyone in the audience will see. It's a pretty visual piece. But again, more than anything, it's just this sort of beautiful, uplifting musical representation.
Yes, and very unique. I mean, to see a concerto for 4 percussionists and an orchestra with three different stations.
I think for us, one of the things we love about playing percussion is what we do is so visual. You can see every note we hit, and you can see kind of what's going to come from an instrument before we strike that instrument. There's sort of an expectation. So much of what we do is actually visually sort of identifying, so we find that to be sort of extra exciting,
Yes, very theatrical.
Right.
Yeah, so you've been working in that ensemble for 11 years. Can you tell us some few sentences of each person's personality in the quartet, or something fun about each member of the quartet?
I mean, the funny thing about making music with 3 other people for more than a decade is that they start to become family to you. Like we have these weird relationships where we work together and we're colleagues, but we're also like super close. They're my three closest friends, which is a very strange kind of relationship. You joked in the beginning that it's a long-term relationship, and in a lot of ways it is, in all the best and worst ways. So of course, we as a percussion quartet, we get to play music together, but one of the other things we do is we do all kinds of less glorious things together, like moving instruments and getting on airplanes and traveling through airports with 15 suitcases and all kinds of fascinating little percussion logistics. But one little anecdote about the way we travel, two of us, Victor and I, whenever we've been touring this one piece lately, and whenever we travel, one really important part of that piece is that we have to be like physically active when we play the piece. For some reason, it's an athletic and demanding piece, and so no matter what, we have to run the morning of those concerts. So we always like go on crazy runs together, and so the two of us have this hilarious like log of the most random places we've been all over the world, but only in sort of this list of runs that we've done all over, and I mean, really fun places. And the other two always just mostly make fun of us for having to kind of go out and do this crazy thing every morning.
Well, we are looking forward to see you in the streets of Lexington and cheer.
Oh yeah, it'll be happening.
I might join you then, because I need also to spend that energy. Is it gonna be your first time in Lexington?
Yes, I think definitely my first time, and our first time as a quartet for sure. It's possible people have come individually, but definitely for Sandbox, our first time in Lexington.
This is so exciting. Are there some things you're looking forward to in town?
That's a good question. Well, you just mentioned some bourbon that we were maybe going to need to put in our wine glasses. So I know that's on our list a little bit. But that, other than, one of our favorite parts of this particular piece, the concerto, is that we get to play with other people. We get to play with other musicians. So much of what we do is just the four of us together. And so what we love is that we get to go and meet people like you and meet the orchestra and share this awesome piece with them, meet your audience. So for us, these performances are so joyful because it's really bringing together of people.
Wonderful. Well, it's a beautiful town, and I hope you will have time to walk or run around. And great restaurants, great arts, a lot of things. We will perform another piece together right after the intermission, and it's Homunculus by Julia Perry, who actually was born in Lexington. So a Lexington-born composer. Might be the first time you will play it, or did you already play it?
Nope, this will be the first time we play it. Yeah.
This is very exciting piece. It's very seldomly performed. So we are very excited to have your quartet, our percussion players, our piano player, and harp player together join forces to perform that piece.
Definitely. And to me, those two pieces represent like two ends of the spectrum in terms of percussion repertoire. This piece was 1960, I believe, and Viet's piece 77 years later, or no, 1960, 57 years later.
Yeah.
I can count, I swear. Which in the world of percussion repertoire, that period of time represents a time of massive change. And so 1960 is a piece that we would actually consider to be pretty early for contemporary percussion music. And so for us, that's super exciting. That's not music we get to play very often. And of course, we get to join the percussion section there, which is awesome.
How many instruments do you know how to play as a percussion player?
That is a good question. So the best way to answer it is if I could show you a picture of our percussion studio in Brooklyn. So we have a rehearsal studio that is like sort of filled to the walls or filled to the ceiling with instruments. I don't have a number, but it's never really ending. So for example, in Viet's piece, we had to really master these wine glasses, which I don't think I considered an instrument in the traditional sense, but now has sort of become one, right? So our lives as percussionists are always that way. We're always having to learn something that some composer has invented and sort of find a way of mastering it and sort of bringing art to it. So it's an endless pursuit over here.
Which is so exciting to
Right.
keep learning things.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, anything behind you could be a percussion instrument.
That's right. That's right. I don't know if this sounds good, but it could.
Do not destroy anything. And you're gonna travel with all of your instruments, I believe, right? I mean, or most of your instruments, many of them.
For this particular piece, we have to travel with some special things, but we borrow other things. And it's always sort of a combination for us. For example, I keep talking about the wine glasses, but those we'll have to bring because they're special wine glasses because they have to be tuned to specific pitches. And so we fly with them, but we fly very carefully with them so that they stay safe on an airplane. Yes.
What could you tell to someone who's never come to a concert or very rarely goes to a concert to, yeah, that's awesome, I really want to go there?
Yeah, that is a really important and good question. I think the fact that this piece is not just a piece that you close your eyes and listen to. This is a, like you said, theatrical. There is a little bit of theatricality to this particular concerto. It's a really visual piece. We move all over the stage. If you come to that performance and you are bored, I think I can confidently buy you a drink afterwards. It certainly will not be boring for anyone.
I do agree. I really recommend everyone get a ticket because that's a unique experience. First time in Lexington, and that's not a piece that's performed a lot. Amazing. You will remember that concert forever. There is no way to forget that experience.
That's right.
This is on Saturday, May 20th at the Singletary Center for Performing Arts, and at 7:30 p.m. we have a pre-concert lectures with you all Sandbox Percussion, starting from 6:45 to 7:15 p.m. I want to thank you so much, Terry, for spending time with us today, and looking forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks for having me. Can't wait to see you all next week.